yeah, you're right on there.
This is Jim taking people lunch together.
Nice to meet you. You're a legend around these parts. It's very nice to meet you. Thank you both for coming.
Oh, we have people joining.
We do?
Mm-hmm.
How many we
Say
got?
hi. Say hi.
Hey, everyone.
We have 9
Okay,
people.
so if everybody wants to just gather around for just a few minutes, I know it's a little bit hot out here, but rather than all going inside, we're going to get Merrick to talk a little bit about his work, and then maybe briefly for, say, 5 or 10 minutes, and then people can ask questions afterward. So Merrick is here with us from Los Angeles, recently graduating from RISD, and we are totally excited to have him and the work here. And I know people will probably have questions afterward, but I'm going to turn it over to Merrick and let him, talk about the work a little bit.
Hello, everyone. Thank you very much for coming out. This is such a great turnout. So nice to see so many new faces. Thank you to Scott for creating this space and bringing community together and sharing art. And I'm just really thrilled to be here. So thank you. I'll just go ahead and start a little bit about the work. My father was a fisherman and crabber for many years, and so I grew up with a very physical relationship to the landscape. And so the nets are usually the first question I get, what's the deal with the nets? For me, it's kind of a re-engagement with the physical relationship to landscape and that idea of labor in conjunction with landscape, and that conversation is kind of the driving force of the work for me. And using the nets kind of allows me to tap back into some of that familial history and explore some of the ideas that interest me. And probably there's kind of 2 main ideas I've been working with in the work. The first one is the idea of the map is not the territory, which is David Korzynski's idea that of reduction, that the map is never the territory. The way you kind of illustrate the actual thing can only be a reduction of what the thing is. So the map is always going to be a reduction of territory. So this got me really interested, especially coming from a printmaking background. Reduction is something that's always kind of been in my zeitgeist. So the paintings are kind of a physicalized way of thinking about reduction. So the way I create these paintings is using a netting as a matrix to push material through. And as the nets, each layer kind of dries, it closes down the amount of area for material to pass through. So they become a physical way of thinking about reduction, or kind of this embodiment of reduction. And so that's kind of what kickstarted all of this work and is the driving force behind it. And then that research kind of led into Gregory Bateson, who's kind of a pseudoscientist thinker in the 70s, and he had an idea of the pattern which connects, and that's the name of the show, obviously. And so that idea is kind of that there is something, he always says, what connects the crab to the lobster, and the rose to the orchid, and all 4 of those things to me, and me to you. And so the work is really trying to investigate that pattern that connects us all. And especially at the beginning of the pandemic, there was such a desire to have connection, and so many social issues that demanded our attention. And this way of thinking for me was kind of an investigation into, what does connect us all, and that's something that I think we kind of all need to think about right now. And being able to, if you can get from a lobster and a crab and an orchid and a rose being connected, we definitely as a community can figure out what connects all of us. So reaching to kind of the most abstract end of that, and kind of back into engineering that idea a little bit about the paintings. And a couple questions I've had today have been about the images, kind of some of the paintings that have this hieroglyph, and some of them that have these tea leaves. And for me, the tea leaves actually stand for body and soul, and some animistic religions. And so I use the tea leaf to kind of talk about body and soul, and the ones that kind of are hieroglyphs are that space in between body and soul. What is that other thing that connects us? And so a lot of these images, I call them hieroglyphs, are kind of a personification of that space between. And so that's pretty much what the work is about. There's much more to it also, but that's kind of the introduction to the work. And if anyone has any questions, I'm happy to answer them. Yes.
Did you grow up on the West Coast?
I did not. I grew up in Virginia Beach, Virginia. I did my first 2 years of undergrad at Auburn University, actually. So this is a coming back to the roost in a way for me, and moved out to LA about 9 months ago, almost a year now. Yes.
What contemporary artists appeal to you?
Contemporary artists. Carrie Moyer, huge fan of her work. Christine von Heil was probably what set me off on a investigation, like a fascination with abstraction. Definitely was kind of I saw one of her shows in DC, and it just radically changed the way I thought about painting. And William Kindred would be my three, kind of just the way he talks about process and examines process and allows mistakes into his work and into his practice is something that I strive to allow into my studio as well.
Yeah. Speaking of process, do you start with the net, or do you start with the images, or do you work back and forth between the two?
So I start with the underpainting and then actually adhere the nets to the painting so they don't move too much, and then build up kind of these color fields within that. And the final, I was telling Scott earlier that the end of the painting is actually not me painting the painting, it's me ripping off the net. So I never quite know what they're going to look like until the very end. It's kind of a hope and pray that this works out. And like, I made this beautiful thing, and now I'm going to rip it all off. And so yeah, it's slowly built up, and then the net's removed at the very end. That kind of is just a way for me to re-engage with that idea of pulling nets in.
When Picasso said something like, first you have to kill the chicken, kill the pigeon, whatever it was.
Exactly, yeah. Exactly.
You got to kill the beauty of it to get to the next step.
Exactly, yes. I like that.
Well, it's not correct. It's not exactly.
It's close, I got you.
I think you just answered the question I had, but we noticed some areas of what I would call, if it was an older painting, paint loss. Does that happen when you take the net off?
Yes.
Okay.
So about a third of the material is removed when I actually pull the nets off, and depending on temperature and a lot of variables, how much paint comes off with the net is sometimes why some paintings don't make it to the show. Some stay in the studio, but yes, it's there are areas that sometimes, I always, like I said, try and keep William Kindred in my studio a bit, and so a lot of times when things don't go my way, I kind of try and look at it as an opportunity to re-engage with the painting in a new way. Yes.
This is the hieroglyph, right? Everyone this long?
Yes.
Okay, and then that's the tea leaves. So what about the one, I just call them wavy. What's the inspiration for those? Is it water or what is
Yes, it's still using the netting. So the larger works I put under the kind of title of plastic camouflage, which I try and use very plasticized looking colors. And the smaller works are more about actually like a space or a place I've been. Usually our drives on the on the West Coast, up and down the PCH, and reacting to the landscape and taking pictures of like getting a snapshot of our drive and being like, okay, that's why some of them are named like Halfway-ish Home or where the dust settles is like pulling back into town, and you'll start to see more natural colors in some of the smaller works.
I have a question. So Merrick, getting to know you over the last couple days, printmaking is in your heart and soul, right? Do you feel like you have abandoned that a little bit, or do you feel like you have enhanced that process by turning toward painting?
I like to think of it as kind of reinterpreting it, maybe, as I think that one of the exciting things happening right now in printmaking is people are starting to push the boundary of what a print is. It doesn't need to be a work on paper. It doesn't need to be an addition to print. And this process of working allows me to do all of my favorite parts about printmaking and think about the work in the same way I think about prints, but it's able to stand on its own as a unique work instead of a master printed edition. And I think that allows me to have a little more nuance and leave room for those mistakes, which turn into new opportunities.
Are you going to revisit the printmaking?
I don't know. I get asked that a lot. I just, the way I make these paintings feels so much like the way I make prints that I'm not losing any of the things I love about printmaking when I make these paintings.
Okay. Anybody else?
The netting that you rip off.
Yes.
I mean, I see that as more artwork.
The performance of it?
Yeah, well, possibly that, but it's the material.
Yeah.
Some more at a later date when you're inspired.
Sorry?
When you were inspired.
How did it come?
Yeah, or using it.
Yeah. So I started out using cheesecloth because it's such a excess thing we have in printmaking, a material that we have so much of in printmaking, that I thought, how can I use this in a new and exciting way? And then during the pandemic, my girlfriend came home with a huge bag of potatoes. The first day, started hoarding food like everyone else, and I was like, let me have that net real quick. Let me borrow that. And it just is such a good symbol of labor in relationship to landscape that it just kind of felt so natural to stand in for all the things I was trying to talk about.
Have you made a video of that?
I have some, yes, but yeah, I have a few.
It's a top secret.
They're private for now. We'll see.
So I have a question. So, plastic camouflage is an umbrella term, and then you use these plastic colors or colors that are maybe unnatural in the natural world. So are you making some sort of commentary on environment and saving our waters and environmentalists, saving our planet?
Yes, there's definitely all of that. That's kind of, I was telling Scott earlier that these paintings encompass so much for me. They're all the way from environmental stuff to the more theoretical stuff, and it's hard to talk about in 5 or 10 minutes. But yeah, totally. I mean, before I was making these paintings, I was making paintings of trash bags. So the use of plastic and the idea of plastic and how much plastic is now just becoming part of our landscape. And it will be integrated into our landscape inevitably to a point past return. And so what does the future of landscape look like? And unfortunately, it looks kind of plastic. And so yeah, there's definitely a huge part of the work is also environmentally related.
Thank you.
Have you ever considered using the material that you tear away as an artwork?
Like a sculpture.
A sculptural work? Or...
Yes. I have hundreds of these used nets in my studio. Right now they're hanging up from the ceiling as flags, but in the studio, but they will eventually be a part of something for sure. I have some ideas, but nothing
It's not
ready to bring out into the world. Yeah, there's some R&D to do still.
Very good.
Definitely.
Anybody else have any other questions? Merrick, thank you very much.
Thank you.
What a treat to have you here. I hope everybody enjoys the show and gets a chance to look at the works up close because they really are amazing. So enjoy, get some wine, and thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Wow.